In 1943, the world's most elite fighter pilots looked down from their cockpits and laughed. The machine climbing toward them was clumsy, overweight, and so ugly they called it the flying milk bottle. They thought it was a joke. But just 2 years later, the sound of that same machine would make veteran soldiers physically sick with fear. This is the story of how the most ridiculed fighter of the war became the weapon that shattered the German Air Force. On April 8, 1943, high above France, German ace Ralph Hermeken smirked inside his oxygen mask. Below him, the new American P-47 Thunderbolts were struggling to gain altitude, their massive barrel-shaped bodies looking almost comical. 2 pilots flying sleek Messerschmitts and Focke-Wulfs. These 7-tune American planes looked like a mistake. "They've sent us flying milk bottles," Hermeken radioed to his wingman. After their first encounters, German command agreed. One top pilot reported that the P-47 flies like a truck, turns like a freight train, climbs like a pregnant cow. The Germans were confident this new fighter was simply meat for the slaughter. But what they couldn't see was the terrifying secret hidden inside that clumsy design. This bizarre machine wasn't a mistake. It was a monster by design. The man behind it, a Georgian-born genius named Alexander Kartveli, had been tasked with creating a high-altitude interceptor. But instead of copying the lightweight European fighters, he created something entirely new. He admitted to his team, "It will be a dinosaur. But it will be a dinosaur with good proportions." The reason for its massive size was a complex turbo-supercharger system, with ducts running through the fuselage that gave it that pregnant appearance. This system was designed to feed its 2,000 horsepower engine at extreme altitudes, where other fighters gasped for air. It was a juggernaut, built to fight in the stratosphere, a place where the rules of air combat were about to be rewritten. But before it could terrorize the Germans, the P-47 first had to be tamed, and its first victims were its own pilots. The 56th Fighter Group lost a staggering 18 pilots and 41 aircraft in training accidents before even seeing combat. The plane was a beast. It would flip over on landing, roll unexpectedly on takeoff, and dive so fast that its controls would freeze solid. Pilots initially hated it. One of America's future top aces, Robert Johnson, said his first flight was like strapping yourself to a locomotive. He realized you didn't fly the Thunderbolt, you aimed it. For the American pilots, mastering this machine was a life-or-death struggle. But for those who did, it unlocked an unbelievable power. The moment the Germans realized they had made a terrible mistake came on June 26, 1943. It was an event that would become legendary. Second Lieutenant Robert S. Johnson was flying at the back of his formation when 16 German fighters dived on them from out of the sun. In seconds, his P-47 was torn apart by cannon fire. The canopy shattered, wounding him. Hydraulic fluid sprayed into the cockpit, and fire erupted from the instrument panel. Johnson tried to bail out, but the canopy was jammed shut, welded in place by an exploding shell. He was trapped in a dying aircraft at 27,000 feet, but then the impossible happened. The P-47 kept flying. With no visibility and an engine shaking itself to pieces, Johnson leveled out and pointed his wreck toward England. A lone German pilot found the crippled Thunderbolt and moved in for the kill. He fired his cannons until he was out of ammunition. The P-47 shuddered, but flew on. He then emptied his machine guns into it. Still, it flew. The German pilot pulled alongside Johnson, staring in utter disbelief. He shook his head, gave a stunned salute, and peeled away. Johnson somehow landed his plane, which had over 200 bullet holes and cannon shells lodged just inches from his head. German intelligence refused to believe the report. No aircraft could survive that. The flying milk bottle was unkillable. Just making it through was one thing. Fighting back was another. American pilots quickly learned they couldn't turn with the nimble German fighters. So they stopped trying. They invented a new way to fight, turning the P-47's greatest weakness, its massive weight, to its greatest weapon. Called it the boom and zoom, climbing to over 30,000 feet. Higher than most German fighters could effectively operate, they would wait. When the enemy appeared below, the Thunderbolts would roll over and dive, accelerating to over 500 miles per hour. At that speed, they were an unstoppable force. At the bottom of the dive, they would unleash a weapon the Germans had never faced: 8.50 caliber Browning machine guns. German pilots who survived described it as flying into a solid wall of lead. Aircraft didn't just get shot down. They disintegrated, shredding into metal confetti in less than 2 seconds. The laughter had officially stopped. Just as the Germans were learning to fear the Thunderbolt's dive, the Americans gave them something new to dread. In early 1944, a new variant arrived with a massive 13-foot paddle blade propeller. A single upgrade was a game-changer. It dramatically improved the P-47's climb rate, allowing it to match or even beat German fighters. Now, there was no escape. The new propeller also changed the sound of the aircraft. The blade tips would break the sound barrier, creating a deep, thundering roar that could be heard for miles. German troops on the ground began calling it Donnerschlag, the thunderclap. It was the sound of vengeance, a menacing rumble that announced death was coming from above. So the fat American fighters had learned to climb, and now they were coming for everyone. With its performance issues solved, the P-47 fully embraced its true calling: pure, unrestrained destruction. As the Allies prepared for D-Day, the Thunderbolt was unleashed on ground targets, becoming the most feared Jabbo, or fighter bomber, of the war. Its 8 machine guns could tear through trucks and armored cars, but it soon carried a payload equal to a medium bomber. So 1,000-pound bombs under its wings and 10 5-inch rockets, each with the power of an artillery shell. A German officer in Normandy described the horror. They came in so low, you could see the pilots' faces. The sound was terrifying. A column of our trucks simply ceased to exist. 20 vehicles transformed into burning wreckage in one pass. The psychological effect was devastating. The P-47 systematically destroyed the German army's ability to move during the day, strangling their supply lines and turning any daylight movement into a suicidal act. In the end, the P-47's victory wasn't just about its toughness or firepower. It was a symbol of an unstoppable force, American industrial might. While Germany struggled to replace its losses, America was building one Thunderbolt every hour, around the clock. Over 15,000 were built in total. For every plane the Germans shot down, 20 more were on their way. The same was true for pilots. By 1944, the U.S. was graduating 30,000 pilots a year, each with more training hours than many German veterans. Joseph Priller, the same ace who had once mocked the P-47 as a pregnant cow, later admitted the devastating truth. He said, "They didn't beat us through better tactics or braver pilots. They buried us under an avalanche of steel and lead." The Germans had laughed at the flying milk bottle in 1943. By 1945, there were hardly any German pilots left. The thunder had spoken, and the sky belonged to America. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story, hit that like button and subscribe for more incredible history. See you in the next one.